Things are stressful. How and should you be talking about it at work? Today on the TWIJ Show.
Why, hello there. I am Chris Swink. I had a little audio drop there for a second. I'm Chris Swink. I'm the technically CEO and co-founder. Welcome to the TWIJ Show. Today we're talking about workplace stress. What the heck can you do about it, and should you be talking about it at work? To do that, I'm joined by Anthony Vaughn and Angela Howard, the co-founders of E1B2 Collective, which is a business consultancy that puts employees first and business second. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you. How are you?
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. So, guys, 2020's a lot. And so I think the right way to talk about it, a lot of entrepreneurs, business leaders, team leaders, HR leaders, I think are having that same question of, should I even be talking about pandemic, racial inequality, protest movement, elections, politics, partisanship? So I think the right setup to start us with is, should leaders be addressing outside stresses in the workplace, stuff that is not in the workplace in a direct way?
Yeah, that's a great question, very timely. So at E1B2, we really focus on putting people at the center of work. So what does that mean, right? It really means that every human brings themselves to work every day, and acknowledging the experiences of team members is important. So to answer your question, yes, I think there is a sense of responsibility that we all spend a significant amount of time at work every day, and we bring our experiences even from outside the workplace. But really, it really comes down to a one size doesn't fit all, right? As a leader, you really have to be in tune and listen and audit your team members to understand what kind of stressors and conversations need to be had within the team.
Yeah, there's really not much to add to that. Stressors are important. Unpacking what they are is definitely important. I think whether it's race, whether it's politics, whether it's everything that's going on in the world today, at the end of the day, we're just human beings. We have not been taken over by the AI technology monsters yet. So it is time that we recognize that employees are running our organizations, and stress is part of a human nature, and so it's time to react to that.
And I gotta feel like the challenge we have, though, is different employees might have different relationships. An employee might not want to talk about every period of social unrest. Someone might not want to talk about the pandemic in between, like the first 5 minutes of every Zoom call. An employee might not want partisanship to be the topic every time. You guys talk about employee centricity. I wonder if you can use that as a vehicle to explain, how do you know what is helpful to be talking about in terms of outside stresses, and when are you just adding to the stress by referencing it way too often?
Brilliant question. I think the important thing is holding space for it. So it's not about spending every town hall or team meeting about using the first 10 minutes, but perhaps, you offer the opportunity to talk about it, or to, if multiple people on your team are feeling a similar way, what you don't want to do is having people come to work in fear of having these conversations, right? That's what you don't want. That's what you're trying to avoid. So my answer to that is create the spaces for the people who need it. And for those who don't need it and it's additional stress, then you're not kind of overlooking it, but you're not necessarily, talking about it head on every day. So I think it's really about creating and holding space for it.
2 words, audit and ego. So audit is incredibly important, right? We need to audit every single member of your organization at an individual level. Now, if you're a company of 1,000, that's really difficult, but tough luck. I don't know, like try it, work it out. Like it's something you have to go through. If you're a startup, small business, 100, few hundred individuals, probably is a bit easier. Everyone's going to have different perspectives. Everyone's going to have different things they want to talk about. And I think it's important to unpack that. Now, ego, I threw that in there very quickly, is because I'm on this kick right now. A lot of leaders are taking their own personal opinions about what they want to talk about, what's frustrating them, what's interesting to them, and they're trying to push those conversations and assuming that the macro organization has these same perspectives. Audit everyone else, remove yourself from the picture, and have those conversations maybe with your fellow executives or with family. You are there to kind of manage and unpack the feelings and the perspectives of your team, not to unpack your own personal perspectives and dive into your own personal ego.
A couple experiences that we've even had at our small 20-person company that I hear in the words you're saying. One, we have some really important dedicated spaces on Slack. We have an employee-run channel for the more than half of our teammates are people of color. We have a space for the teammates of ours who identify as women. We have also affinity groups and background groups, and I think allowing for space to be like for folks to organize is not a challenge to leadership, but as a real opportunity for then ideas to bubble up. And when I've had blind spots, they've often come from those groups of like, hey, we need to address this. Or hearing from employees, I have heard employees like, we get it, man. We got the space. We need to like not talk about that every Zoom meeting. That's sort of what I feel like. That's maybe something you're talking about employee centricity. It has to come from. You need to have feedback loops, I suppose.
Yeah, feedback loops, and then to your point, helping. I love affinity groups, but I also love bringing people together from diverse perspectives, right? Because I think that's a key here is understanding, like, I'm not feeling that way, but there are others who are experiencing it. So me perhaps saying this or discrediting this other thing might impact other people. So I think it's understanding the individual. So leaders have a hard job, right? And that's why we pay them the big bucks. So they not only have a responsibility to themselves and trying to help digest and understand what's happening with themselves and self-awareness, but they also have to understand their team members and the dynamics on the team. And there's even kind of a social responsibility layer to all this, which is if you own a business, if you're a founder of a business, what does your role and your purpose with that organization have with some of these issues that are happening? So it is multi-layered. So I think holding the space, but also creating spaces for people to learn and understand what others' experiences are like.
And you have to do a really, really great job. I'm just going to add this little caveat, and then we'll move on. You have to do a really, really great job of managing the room and managing employees' perspectives, and not allowing bullying or not allowing negativity of one's point of view. Let's just call it what it is. The political landscape right now is very frustrating. The race landscape right now is incredibly frustrating. What you have to be careful of is when you're creating that space, you're creating those employee centric channels where they're actually running those channels. You as a leader need to get in there and manage those channels, manage those conversations, facilitate, and make sure there's no bullying. That's what we're not going to do. That should be kind of the statement that you make as a leader, and there's going to be consequences connected to that if we see those things, because that's going to make this entire process of authenticity and transparency go to a place that's where we don't want it to go.
Feels very tied to what your organizational culture is, what your even team culture is. So we got a couple minutes left. Let's just dive a bit more into specifics. So, okay, I watch this video or read this article, and man, I'm feeling a little uncertain about whether I'm speaking too much or not enough, or I'm creating enough space or not enough, or I have the spaces or I don't. If I don't even have a handle on where I am, what's some of your advice? What does E1B2 think that organizational leaders, team leaders should be doing specifically to understand where they are and improve?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just take time to listen. And if that means setting aside 2 hours in your calendar physically because you're working on your time management, trying to find time for everything, just listen to your team members. And what that means, what does that look like, right? Right now, we may be in a dispersed hybrid type of working environment. Make sure you meet with your team at least weekly, your team as a whole, but also the individuals on the team. So I think leaders sometimes make that they don't spend time with the individuals on their team. They usually have team meetings. So I always recommend to do a weekly one-on-one, and especially in this environment, ask them how they're doing. How are they adjusting to a new work environment? How are they adjusting to the external factors, and what's in their way of them doing their best work? So that last question, that third question, is really important, because that's when things about what's happening externally comes out, but also some things that may be happening internally that are preventing them from performing and feeling at their best.
Actually, Anthony, before I throw it to you, Angela, I want to push on you a bit, because I've heard some tactical advice before on those one-on-ones that so many those listening will have experiences with. That if you invest the 10, 20 minutes or the entire one-on-one a few times, when it's not necessary or when the teammate doesn't feel it's necessary, you can get right down to business. I guess the point is, those are investments. Like, you can make sure that you know that the space is available, that you have the ability to have the dialogue with that teammate. And sometimes it might be like, you know what, as I've gotten, I'd rather just like dive into the work. I'm feeling stressed. Let's just get to the work. Where I've also had dialogues when suddenly the entire hour became a where are we? So there's a degree of investment there. Is that fair? Yes,
and it needs to be employee driven, right? So have your framework of what you want to touch on. Leave some space in the beginning. But if that team member has a very specific topic to discuss with you because they want to get a move on, they need approval to get to the next step, let them have that space. But, you also don't, as adults, we tend to kind of bury sometimes, right? And I feel like, not that we all need to be therapists as leaders, but I feel like sometimes you just need to ask the question, like, are you really okay? Like, let's just pause. And if you know your team members well enough, you know their default and what they go back to when they're stressed. So again, it's about listening, keeping your ears and your eyes open, and adjusting those conversations.
I did the little finger thing because he said something that was incredibly important. If I could add a little caveat. I have this thing called emotional glue that I think a lot of leaders miss the mark on, which is, if you really have enough trust and enough emotional glue and enough connection with someone that you're working with or someone that you're leading, 9 times out of 10, at some point, they're going to open up. So one thing that I want a lot of leaders, I guess, to think about and remember right now, if you have a staff right now that typically has not really been opening up, getting to that true authentic feeling in what they're having, that may be more of a negative sign on you as a leader and sending you a message saying you need to find a way to build that emotional glue, build that trust. Because at the end of the day, let's just call it what it is. A friend's going to vent and open up. Even a close kind of colleague is going to open up. If you've been kind of executing as a leader from this very external, manager versus kind of, employee type relationship, and you haven't done a good job of breaking down that barrier and creating a lot of comfortability and a lot of safe spaces, you actually may not have an opportunity to do a lot of great work during these moments, which are actually really pivotal. So use that as a, I don't want to call it a warning sign, but be very clear that if you're not getting a lot out of your employees, do whatever you need to do, and some tactics we can talk about another time, to kind of break through that emotional glue, really get to the center spot, and really allow them to open up and explain how they're feeling.
I love that. Employee centricity. That's coming from Anthony and Angela from E1B2 Collective. Guys, thank you so much for your time and your feedback.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.